Cartwright, co-president of Pride at Work, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender constituency group of the AFL-CIO. I want to thank the chair and the members of the committee for the opportunity to submit testimony from the labor movement in support of House Bill 235. First, I'd like to read from a statement by Donna S. Edwards, Secretary-Treasurer of the Maryland State and District of Columbia AFL-CIO, and its 300,000 members and their families. The labor movement has long stood in the forefront of efforts to prevent discrimination against the most vulnerable people in the workforce, including workers who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. The AFL-CIO reaffirmed its support at its September 2009 convention in Pittsburgh, and the Maryland State and D.C. AFL-CIO took similar action at our October 2009 convention. Lesbian, gay, bisexual workers are protected from discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations under Maryland law since 2001, but transgender workers remain largely unprotected. Transgender and other gender-different people suffer severe and pervasive discrimination in employment. As a result, many transgender and gender-different people continue to suffer from chronic unemployment and underemployment, and many others who retain their jobs receive the door closed to further career development. While local ordinances, executive orders, labor contracts, and employer policies are increasingly recognizing this problem and attempting to remedy it, such protections remain insufficient. Currently, transgender workers in Maryland have statutory protection only in Baltimore City and Montgomery County. HB 235 would extend these protections statewide. We in the labor movement have long believed that an injury to one is an injury to all. We urge you to act to help remedy workplace discrimination against transgender and gender-different Marylanders. On behalf of Pride at Work, we believe that now is the time to take effective action to protect transgender workers as well as other workers whose gender identity or expression do not conform to traditional expectations against discrimination in employment and employment-related benefits. Transgender and other gender-different people suffer severe and pervasive discrimination in employment. Indeed, such discrimination is a major factor in the serious disadvantage that is experienced by this community. In my experience of more than 10 years of advocating for transgender people, I have seen many of them lose their jobs on coming out or on being outed. Indeed, often transgender workers have found themselves unable to find work ever again in their professions, despite strong qualifications and excellent work records. Many transgender and gender-different people continue to suffer from chronic unemployment or underemployment, and many others who retain their jobs have seen the door closed to further career development. Transgender workers are often handicapped in seeking employment by the lack of documentation appropriate to their gender presentation. Transgender and gender-different people who are unable to secure stable employment that fully utilizes their skills and talents are often forced into the underground economy, into the sex trade with all its dangers, or into under-the-table cash businesses in which they can be badly exploited. By enacting this bill, Maryland would send a critically important signal, not only to employers but also to young people who are on the brink of coming out as transgender, that there may be some future for them that does not rely on sex work or on casual off-the-books employment. I ask you to render a favorable report on HB 235 and send it to the full House of Delegates. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Jonathan Sherberg. I am an attorney in Silver Spring, Maryland. This is my first opportunity to testify before this committee. I have appeared before others. I want to take just a moment to recognize my fellow Montgomery County delegates, Delegate Kelly, Delegate Resnick, and Delegate Cullison, all sponsors of this bill. In 2008, I, as an attorney, represented proponents of Montgomery County's legislation that you're hearing about today. There was an effort to put that bill on for referendum. And as part of that effort, I came into contact with hundreds of people who run the gamut of transgender, gender identity. And quite frankly, before that, I didn't know very much of anything about such people, very little. And I came to know them and I got to hear their stories. For anybody that cares to talk about the legal part of it, I'd be happy to do that. But my testimony today is about the people that I met and the stories that I heard, which quite frankly, they broke my heart to hear people testifying to me, telling me about the things that they went through. You've heard some of it here today. It's just wrong. It's just not what we as Maryland should be about. And what it made me think about as I was preparing to testify today is it made me think back to being a kid. because the most terrifying time in almost most people's lives when I talk to people, and I'd ask you to think about the same thing, as uncomfortable as that might be, is how everybody got teased about something. You get teased about getting your hair cut. You get teased about being too fat or too skinny or too tall or too whatever. I was always teased about being too skinny. I don't have that problem anymore. I was also teased whenever I got a haircut, and I don't have that problem anymore. I was also teased about talking too much. I still have that problem. But that's why I'm a lawyer. So I was able to take that and do something useful with it. But we all had different things, whatever it was. And I want you to think about that and think how sometimes bad that felt. Sometimes even maybe you were on the side where you were teasing somebody else. But what's happening to people who are transgender and have gender identity issues is they're going through that as adults. We talk about bullying with children. We want to stop bullying. Teasing is one thing. Being made fun of because you got a haircut is one thing. But bullying is wrong. And we try to stop it. And I know this House of Delegates and this General Assembly have dealt with these issues. But this is worse. Because this isn't children doing things to other children. This is adults doing things to other adults for no other reason than because of the way they look. Because it's as if they were saying because they're too skinny or too fat. And we try to do something about that. We talk about appearance. We talk about race. We talk about religion. We talk about things that matter as adults. But when you think back to when you were a kid and how bad it felt, well, we're not kids anymore. And it's not about teasing. It's not about bullying. It's about jobs. It's about the most important things we have. It's about where you live. You heard testimony of somebody here today say they had to live out of their car because they were fired from their job. And how many hundreds, if not thousands of other people, I've heard stories like that before. And like I said, they break my heart. And it's time to put this aside. This is all, I believe. It may be well-meaning, but opponents of these kinds of protections, they come at this from two things, I believe. And they may be sincere and well-meaning people, but they come at it from ignorance and they come at it from fear. Because they don't know. I didn't know. If you had asked me in 2005 what I knew about transgender people, I wouldn't have known anything. What I know now is they're just people. They're smart people. A lot of them helped me with what I did in 2008. Some of them are smart, some of them are not. But they deserve to be treated just like everybody else. If they can do the job, they should get the chance to do the job. And they shouldn't be fired for quite frankly, reasons that children would eventually see beyond. Because the other thing about children ultimately is they have a real basic idea of what's fair. They don't like it when people do things that are unfair. So when we talk about this, I would say, and I want to quote at least one of my favorite songwriters that most people have never heard of, named James McMurtry. It's time to put away childish things. It's time to put away our ignorance and our fear and our biases and our prejudices. Just because somebody looks different than we do doesn't meet what our expectations are. If they're a person who can do the job, then they should get the job. If they're a person who can be a good housemate or be a good neighbor, then they should be allowed to do that. If we can't do that for people like this, and quite frankly, I don't know that we're living up to what we're trying to do here, whether it's me as a lawyer or you as delegates. I ask you, I beg you, please issue a favorable report on HB 235.